love all that you are. That's like, if you can find joy with the perceived dark parts of yourself, then it's so easy to find that joy every day.
Welcome to the Happiness in Progress podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, international speaker, mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This is a space where you belong, not because you earned it, not because of your title, your paycheck, or number of kids you have, but just because you are human and you are good. Here we explore progress over perfection, emotional and spiritual wellness, and how to relish the good parts of life that coexist with the not so good parts. This is Happiness in Progress. I am so glad you're here because today you get to hear from an amazing person. You've actually already heard from her before. Kristy Laschober came on the podcast in 2020. I will link her first episode because in that episode, we talk a lot about her past and what she's been through. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about post-prison and all the amazing things she's been able to do as she's broken through some things that hold a lot of us back, including not being able to be vulnerable, not believing in ourselves, playing small. She just published this book, Perfectly Flawed, Uncovering Your Greatest Purpose. This is really what we talk about in this podcast episode. She is also the founder of the Freedom Exchange Project, and she is a fierce advocate for re-entry and prison reform. And I am so excited to share this conversation with you. So let's get to it. Kristy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor, really.
So it was 2020 before the pandemic. When you came here to the studio, you were like one of maybe a dozen people who actually got to be in studio because the world shut down.
Right.
But so in that conversation, we talked a lot about your history, a lot of what you talk about in the book. And I really want to just encourage everyone to go back to listen to that episode as well. As you were writing your story into this book, I'll share it here, Perfectly Flawed, Uncovering Your Greatest Purpose. What was the hardest thing to put onto paper?
Well, I think because I'm so used to being private, so I'd be like, do I really want to put this? Why am I being so transparent? Like, I know that it's been really useful for me, but do I really want everyone to know all of this? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think
there's a difference between writing it in your journal when it's just for you and the paper in front of you,
right.
And when you're sharing it with the world. You're putting this on
Right.
Amazon. Literally anybody can purchase it. Tell me a little
Girl.
bit about maybe like the day before this book goes live. And I know that you knew in your heart you needed to tell the story, but were there any other feelings?
This journey has made it so that I'm so in awe of the benefits of sharing. Because like I said, I was such a private person. Everyone say, you're the most private person I know. And so to share everything and to watch just an amazing chain of events and life and connections and people unfold. It's almost like oftentimes I'm quiet, like in my house, I'm like, dang, it's just so amazing what's happening. I think that fueled the fire to continue.
Mm-hmm. When you've been talking with people and sharing your book and hearing feedback back from people who are reading it, what are you hearing? What is something that is touching people?
The most consistent word I've been hearing is permission. Like I'm giving people permission to feel their feelings, to acknowledge what they've been through, to be nice to themselves. And even, I say, you don't have to write in the book. I mean, I would like that just because I know the benefits of that, but you can just read it and then later come back and write it. And you're like, oh my God, yes. And you're giving me permission again to do what I want. And I think women, we don't give ourselves, or society doesn't give us permission to just be who we are in all of its glory.
Yeah, I think I can't remember which person told you that crying was just a feeling, right? Like that. Yeah. Like that's just.
They said it's just an emotion. It was Gina who I met.
It was Gina.
Yeah, she is. She was crying. It's just an emotion like laughing. You wouldn't tell yourself not to laugh, would you? I said, no, but it just doesn't feel the same. And she said, yeah, just because you attach a meaning to it, but it's just energy that needs to move through. And I was, so that again, you're right, was permission to feel and to
Mm-hmm.
not feel embarrassed about that.
When did you grant yourself permission?
Mm. I think when I was inside, when I was in the prison cell, and it was hard to, I just read an email the other day that I wrote my mom, and I was saying that I'm just trying to breathe. I'm just trying to make it. And so I had like a little, I don't know if it was a spiritual experience or a spiritual, thought that was like God saying, like, you're my child, and how dare you, um, be mean to yourself or talk down about yourself. So you are, you're and like I was this perfect child that he made. So stop doing that. And I thought, for some reason, that just clicked with me. So I started to just hard on myself and understand that, we make mistakes. And it was like every 5 minutes, I had to remind myself that, for
And that's how
sure.
we
And
are
still
as
sometimes.
humans. That's okay. But as you practice, the 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes and then 20 minutes and then maybe even a full day.
Yeah.
It's a practice.
It is. And oftentimes, another thing that I would think of, like, if my head's telling me something that is making me anxious or sad or down, that's a lie about
Mm.
myself. And if what my head's telling me is joyful and happy and peaceful, then that's truth. And for some reason, that simplicity created a quick, like, oh, that's a lie, oh, that's truth. And now it works really well for me.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. One of the things
It
I love
is.
about your book, so people who are listening who haven't read it, the first, I want to say a little bit more than half, about the first half is your story. And with each section, you ask questions at the end for the reader to kind of think about. And then there's journaling pages in the back. And I love that you take this opportunity to publish a book, but not only to tell your story, but to guide others through self-discovery so that they can experience powerful moments in their own lives. Why was that important to you? And everyone's story is so different.
Right.
There's going to be people, all different types of stories reading your book, but being able to awaken something in themselves. Why was that part of this so important to you?
Like I said, I'm so amazed by everything that's transpired from being vulnerable and really looking all the parts of myself, like the dark side and the lights, like, bringing the dark sides, the perceived dark sides that you don't want anyone to know, out in the open, and just like it is what it is, like, not hide it. What was freedom. It's just pure freedom, because you can be not in prison and be completely in prison in your mind. I think I was prior to, and I've gotten a lot of feedback, especially from women, men too, I'm sure, but women that, don't tell stuff. I mean, a lot of people tell me things because, I can't judge them since I was in prison, like I went so far down. So they know, maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, that I'm not going to judge them. So I hear a lot about what people go through, and it may not be prison, but it really is, stuff that they're hiding. So that if you're going to hide anything, you cannot be your true self. And it still takes time to, be okay with who you are if you've had, self doubt, or if you feel maybe you're adventurous. Like, I have a lot of adventure in my body, and like someone said, oh, it's like you're on a train with no brakes and you just go. And I used to think that was a bad thing, but when used for good and showing up as my whole self with everything that I am and not hiding anything, then it's worked really well for me. So I tell women, like, I don't even need to know what you want to do, or what your story is per se, but whoever you are, and I would say, like, in all your glory, that is who you're meant to be. So once you go inward, then you can, live that life authentically, so that, and that's freedom. That's pure freedom. And we all
Mm,
deserve it.
Yes.
Because we can judge someone in prison, but then so many people are walking around in prison. And then when you have those thoughts about yourself, you tend to judge others because what you're disowned in yourself, like the stuff you're hiding, I'm going to judge them because how dare you show that? But if you just already show it, not tell everybody, but be okay with it and give yourself grace and love and forgiveness, then no one can hurt you, really.
Mm-hmm. Judging is so interesting because it's just this cyclical trap that you get into. But we're going to come back to judging because first I want to say, I think that people tell you their inner dark secrets, not because they're like, oh, she can't judge me, but because you've created a safe place for them to do that.
That's interesting. Okay. I can receive that.
I almost wonder, I wonder if that's a story, that you hold even.
Maybe you know what, and I may have to put that story aside. But yeah, it's true.
Because even when I was reading this, I was like, oh my goodness, like I connect so deeply with you after reading this book and from conversations that we've had where I would feel open to talking to you about XYZ, not because of a judgment.
Okay, that's good. See, I like that. I'm gonna receive that.
there we go. So I want to talk. You talked about the dark and the light, and I love this in the book and vulnerability. And vulnerability is a tough one for, I was going to say me, but I think for everybody. Yeah. Let me see if I can find this quote. All right, here we go. Our soul wants us to be bold and brave, even when we don't think we're ready. That's where the trust comes in. When you are connected to yourself, you trust all the parts of you. I only started living this way after I was released from prison. That's the gift of having all your secrets aired out to the world. So you were kind of forced into vulnerability. So is it the vulnerability that is keeping us from showing up big and bold?
The main thing is we judge ourselves and we're hard on ourselves. And so if we can really practice being really nice to ourselves, and maybe, when I first got out, I said, I'm just going to be of service and I can love others and myself deeply. Like just try to do that, which is hard when you've, like I said, when you've gone so far down or you've lost so much because there's guilt and shame all the time. But I knew that would take me down fast. So I had to eliminate guilt and shame as fast as possible and just come from love and grace. And doing that, I got a lot of beautiful connections in my life that continue to give it to me. I'm always like, oh, why am I getting so much love and grace and kindness back? It was almost like I told my mom, I said, I'm feeling a little choked out of all this love that I'm getting. So it was overwhelming because from, being vulnerable, from not doing that, you don't want to share. But then when you share, all these people are so loving to you. It's like, it's just so different. So I wanted to make people feel comfortable with just let me show my stuff because I've gone through that and I know what the benefits of that would be. So yeah, I think it's really important for ourselves. And I want to be happy. Like your podcast, like I want to be happy. I want to be happy as much as possible every day.
I love, there were a few stories where I was just holding back tears. And one of them was when you were applying for college and there was that little box that asked if you had been in prison or actually it was not the box. It was the 5 years where you didn't have an address.
Right.
And so you had to answer when she said, where were you these 5 years? And you said, and I can only imagine like the fear and the shame. And we live in that as human beings, no matter what our story is, we live there. And I can only imagine the feeling. And when you tell her you were in prison, her response, I just loved. Tell everyone a little bit about that moment and that response.
Makes me emotional still because she could have had so many different responses, like so many different things, maybe not comment or judgment or, indifferent, but she instead was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I was like, what? Like I said, it makes me emotional still. She goes, you're going to be so great. Oh my God. Like she just jumped in board with me. Okay. She goes, I know there's a class downstairs on government. I opened the door, but and I don't know why. I guess it is shame and guilt, but I was like, I had to talk to myself, Kristy, you've lived in a prison cell with lots of, people that have, you know, been in prison for a long time. You can open the door to the community college. Like I had to give myself those talks. The reception I got was just amazing. So yes, I loved her. It was really, so that shows me how I get to be with everybody else and how important it is.
I love that not only did you experience that moment, but then it turns into a teaching moment too. That's like, this is how I show up for other people as well. I am
Yeah,
there
and I
to put
think
the confidence in them.
right, and I think that the contrast was so poignant, and it still is to this day. Deep shame, and then this amazing interaction. So it wasn't even, I think a lot of people, we go through life like this, but yet when you're, like I said, that deep shame, and then you're presented with this amazing joy and love, it's almost shocking a little bit. So you realize, wow, look what that could do for this. And so as you do life like that, it's really fun to do it like that too for others.
There's a quote that I read, and not everybody who listens to this podcast believes in God, but this involves God. So I'm gonna share this one. It's something along the lines of, we live in this world that is so filled with shame and hate and judgment that it's really almost impossible to believe that there might be a God or, a higher being that loves us in an unconditional way that we've not really ever experienced in this life.
Right.
And I think those tiny little moments it's that unconditional love that we're just not used to, because you are human and we're not perfect at practicing unconditional love or receiving unconditional love. And I think that's a really just incredible, powerful moment.
It is. And I go back to, because there was a lot of women in prison that were hurt by religion and different things. So what's really helped me a lot is that knowing that like God lives inside me, or whatever, spiritual being or something bigger than yourself. I say, the moon can pull the whole ocean. So there's something bigger than myself. But I know that for me, it's like I have to love myself super deeply. I know I keep saying that, but that's the key, because if you love yourself unconditionally, that's, spirit inside you, and then you can love others in that way. But if you're not really loving yourself and all the silly things about yourself, then it's hard to love you.
It's hard. In
Yeah.
general, it's hard. One of the moments that I really loved too, I think I just like full cried during this moment, was when you go in, you're in a math class, you take the test, you're just hoping for a C. I mean, I really felt that. And then
Yeah.
you flip this over to see a 100%, and you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not a flawed human being.
Right.
And that,
Yeah. Yeah.
tell me about the moment.
Yeah, it was just another experience of like me, what else am I capable of doing? Especially like I said, the contrast of prison and then 100% was so huge. And so I mean, I was so still, again, that still makes me emotional. I couldn't wait to tell my friends, like I was just so shocked. But again, it made me think maybe there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe there's a purpose for my life, but I had to try and do the hard things that were scary in order to get that experience.
Mm-hmm. And I like to think of all these little things as just like the evidence, and you just build evidence that you're not flawed. And then
Right.
I also think, as humans, like for me, whenever I have the moment, I look back and I'm like, wait, but there was that time that I got that 100%. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
um, tell me about what it means to you to be perfectly flawed.
I think to embrace everything about yourself, to look at your personality, the way you were born, the silly things you do, the things that people maybe complained about you, or the things that you kind of put away and don't show others, like that really is your superpower of those things that you can bring out. But when doing good, meaning when you are on a trajectory of being whole and vulnerable, those things are really like your specialty. So that makes you who you are, perfectly flawed, meaning that you're a human being. So, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to do things that may not be in your best interest time and time again, or maybe they are. Or when you do something good in the morning, you're like, right, Kristy, I would say, good job. You're so smart, like do like counteract that. So we know that, that we recognize on a daily basis that we are human. We're perfect in who I am. Like you are perfect, Danielle, for Danielle. No one else is like you in the whole world. So of course you're going to be you. And so the more comfortable you are with that, then you can show up in the world and be happy and peaceful and know that you're perfectly flawed.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about belonging and belonging to yourself first. How were you able to seek that belonging space within yourself, especially in a world that does write a story about going to prison, about drug use? You know the world we live in. This world is full of drama and stories about all the things that happen. So how did you belong with you first?
I think it was just a lot of effort and awareness all the time. I write still often, but for the first like 5 years, I wrote every morning. It was like my time in the morning was a date with Kristy. I would make a nice cup of coffee with all the ingredients that I wanted, including sugar-free cocoa and minced, creamer. Like I had like 6 things out. And instead, like my head would be like, this is ridiculous. And I said, no, I really like this. Like I got to learn like who I was, talk to myself, and then write. And just really a lot of it too, like just write whatever comes out, but also write, I'm proud of you, or you're doing a great job, or, I know this is hard, but look at you, or, all the things. It's like what you would say to a loving child. And so you if you get in the habit of doing that all the time, then you belong with yourself. It's interesting because coming to New Orleans, I'm in a completely different world. So this is shaking me up a little bit for belonging. So it's requiring me again. I'm like, okay, let's get out the pen and paper and write again. So I remember who I am because I'm in just a completely different environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I can give myself grace and say, okay, so, maybe there's more layers of work that you have to do. And I get to do that. I get to be my best friend and pour into myself. That's my number one job.
Mm-hmm. I think people can identify with that because when the environment changes or when a friend moves away or, whatever it is, you can lose maybe a little bit of maybe part of that identity of, wait, I belong in this place, or I belong with this person. And that is so impermanent.
Right. So we belong wherever we show up. Sometimes it's easier than others. But if your heart is drawn to something, I believe that is part of, your destiny or your purpose. So you go towards it. If you go towards it, and sometimes you call it one of your friends more to say, I don't know what I'm doing, or this is so hard, or I need you to remind me how amazing I am. Okay, I'll wait for your call back, and I won't answer. Just leave me a message about my purpose.
Yeah.
And then you have a friend that does that, and then you're like, okay, thank you. And then they'll do it to you another time. Hey, I need you to remind me, what I'm doing, or what my purpose is, or the great things about myself. Okay, I'll remind you. And that's not bragging. That's not, I think a lot of times we're grown up, or society mainly just says, oh, girls, be quiet, don't be too loud, don't be too this, don't be too that. And that's all a bunch of BS, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I think especially for women to, we were raised in a way to not be even too, don't show off, and
Right.
you
It's
got to be
true.
quiet and don't think too much of yourself. That's not kind enough to everyone around you. And so that's something to work through too, is to accept that.
Yeah. To see exactly who you are, what's your personality, what do you like, what do you don't like percent with that. Because if you don't, you're never going to be okay with others.
Mm-hmm. So that goes back to what we were talking about with judgment, that cyclical thing. When you judge yourself, you judge others. The more you judge others, it's showing what is unhealed in yourself. And you just go around and around and around. And it's also the same with love.
Yeah, it's
when
true.
you don't love yourself, you can't give that love.
Right. Exactly. No, it's true. I always say, for some reason right now, I just feel like I'm on this earth right now. I just get to love people, which is what a gift. But that requires me to love myself too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, oh, I love myself. It's really like it takes effort and a constant awareness.
Mm-hmm. For someone on the beginning of the loving themselves journey, what would your advice be to them?
Well, part of in the book answering the questions, you kind of see the different things you've experienced, and you go back to when you were 16, and you look at different situations that happen. You're like, no wonder I do this, or no wonder I feel this way, or wow, that was an adult who took advantage of me and I didn't even realize it. So
Mm.
you start to see this and you give yourself grace.
Oh my goodness. So I'm a big journaler,
Mm,
and I journaled. I have too many journals of my life. It's too much.
that's good.
Um
That's good.
but I held a lot of shame for a lot of years for something I did in college. And as an adult, I was like, I'm going to flip open my journals and read about this college time. I think that'll be fun. And when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much grace for this past girl. And I can let that shame go in present day me, because I can see a little more fully what that young version of me was going through.
That's a great example. That's a great example, right? Because at the time you don't know it. We've matured and,
Yeah.
have gone through things. And so when you look at it all, you're like, wow, I'm really proud of you for where you are right now. Or, boy, that was hard and you got through that, or, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. So when you're sharing this book and people are talking to you after they read it, what has been something that has hit your heart the most?
That so many people have been through so much
Mm.
and you would never know it. So we walk around this world bumping into people that have so much trauma and pain and experiences that we have no idea about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the main thing that we need, like I said, to give each other grace as much as possible, and just know we're all the same in regard to, doesn't have to be the same exact traumas, but it could just be hard things. And so I love women that are ready to do the work, which is like, when they post a little picture of themselves in the book, I say, put a picture when you were a child, whatever it is. And I've had people like, show me a picture of them in a, like almost like little earrings on. She's like, oh, I was I wanted to be professional and I want to get back to that girl again. And I was like, oh, I
Mm.
love that. Right. I
Yes, I
don't even
love
know a
that.
lot of people, but I love that. So it's like, oh yeah, I remember her doing that or being that way. And through all the stuff things you experience, sometimes you just go in a different direction. Then you're like, wait, I want to go back to her, which I hear that kind of stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love that so many people are being transformed from reading your story, and that you put this out in the world to make that easier than ever. Um, I just don't want to be done talking to you. Let's do two more questions.
Okay.
I was actually I was just talking to our mutual friend, Lindsay, and she said, so many of us, we're getting good with vulnerability, like the safe vulnerability.
Mhm.
So there's like a handful of topics that are very safe. They've become safe on social media to talk about. It's not very, it's not really our what's really hurting us or what's really holding us back. Cause that's not
Right.
quite like, will people really still like me if I share the real stuff?
Yeah.
What would your advice be there on beginning to be vulnerable in those places that feel too dark and scary?
Well, the answer is yes. People will still like you. I mean, I really thought being in prison, I was shocked that my family still loved me.
Mm.
That's how bad I felt about it. So they still love you. People will still love you. I promise you, people have done a lot of things and have been through a lot of things. Everything you've been through, lots of people have. If you think that parts of yourself are not okay with anybody else, like that they're not going to like you, because that's not true. That's a lie you're telling yourself. Just like when you say, well, maybe that's not the story that you think, they can't judge you because of how far down you went. And I'm like, okay, I can receive that. And that feels way more loving the way you described it. So I'm like, I'm gonna take that. So it's like the more loving we can be with ourselves, and you're not going to share everything with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
just a, a trusted person, like a friend, or maybe a coworker that you get along with well, and you don't have to like, wow, everything. You just little bits. Like when I just shared a tiny bit, or if someone would pick me up because I didn't have a car and they, to come to their house, I thought, oh, I tell them because I have kids, not that I did anything with kids, but I didn't, I wanted to be transparent. And so, another girl, I said, so I just got a prison. I just want you to know that. She goes, oh, I bet you have some cool stories. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that
Yeah.
response either.
Yeah.
So if you can say it in a not a shameful way, but just like, I just need to, let you know this, or hey, can I share something with you? Or really probably first just to write it down, get it
Mm-hmm.
out, just journal it out.
Mm-hmm. I think
And then
that,
it's not that scary.
yeah, for sure. One, it's that bringing all the stuff in the subconscious to the conscious and being aware of it with yourself, I think is a good start. And I also, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, and vulnerability does not have to be to everyone. It's to a few select trusted individuals. And then I also like how you shared telling more people who were outside of the inner circle.
But first, you have to be honest and vulnerable with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest part, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And
We like to live
that's,
in denial.
yeah, and denial is just keeping you stuck in small and in prison.
Mm. The last question that I want to ask is the question I've already asked you before, which is, what is your number one tip to finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in between?
I think it just goes back to looking at everything you're about, whether you write it or talk about it or think about it, and love all that you are. Like, if you can find joy with the perceived dark parts of yourself, then it's so easy to find that joy every day.
Mm. Find the
And I
joy
say
with the
perceived,
perceived dark parts of
perceived.
yourself.
Yeah, because we all have them. It's
Yeah, we do.
ridiculous.
I know. Well, I'm trying to reconcile how I'm going to do that.
What do you mean? You don't have any dark sides about you, Danielle. Stop
Yeah, it's just light over here.
it. But isn't it crazy? It's nothing that so many people have not done or been through,
Right. Yeah.
you
Okay,
know?
so I guess before you go, I have to ask how can I and anyone else thinking, yes, I'm going to do this. I am going to be good with the dark parts of myself. I'm going to find joy within that. What's my first step?
The first step, I did this little meditation that was like, I closed my eyes and I made like a picture, a visual in my head of the light parts that I loved about myself.
Mm,
And then it was a picture of a girl swinging on the beach, and it was so beautiful and peaceful. And then do like a visualization of the dark parts of yourself. And shocking, not well, I guess it was kind of surprisingly, it was a picture of like gremlins, like
yeah.
cowering in the corner, like dark. Like I was like, whoa. And then the next thought was like, bring the dark parts of yourself out and combine the picture. So have the girl on the swing at the beach playing with the gremlins. And for some reason that resonated and felt like they can be together. It doesn't have to be this way or this way or this way with these people, and this way with the different, or this in the quiet darkness. They all just get to be together. That really helped me start that process.
That's where you find the authentic you, I think. That is the most truest you. We're so multifaceted, and it's hard when we try to push one of those parts away.
Yeah, and we get connected. I have so many connections now just from being authentic.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, wow, okay, cool. Let me show you some, let me share some of my stuff. And then no one feels judged, and it's kumbaya-ish, for those that want to share. And it's not like you go around talking about all your stuff all the time, but it's just, I think, like you said, a safe space to be.
Yeah. I love it. All right, Kristy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciated you being here. And I just love talking to you every time I get the chance. So thank you.
Danielle. This is awesome. I really appreciate you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have some things to think about and some goals moving forward. I'm really going to bring in that dark and that light, and I'm going to meditate on that. And I'm really excited to start that practice. If you would like to buy Perfectly Flawed, there's a link in my bio. And also you can find the link to that first episode that she and I did together. Thanks for being here on Happiness in Progress.